On the same day that 168 Iranian schoolgirls were being pulled from rubble in body bags, Melania Trump chaired a United Nations Security Council meeting. The topic was children, technology, and education in conflict. She gave a full speech. She discussed how war affects children. She talked about the role of artificial intelligence in educating young people. And she did not mention MNAB once, not the school, not the children, not the 168 girls between the ages of 7 and 12, who had been killed by a strike that American military investigators now believe was likely carried out by American forces. The First Lady of the United States sat at the head of the Security Council and gave a speech about protecting children in conflict zones while the rubble of a girls' elementary school struck on the first day of her husband's war was still being cleared. That is not an oversight. That is a choice. I want to show you exactly what happened in Minab on February 28, 2026. Because the documented facts of this strike are significantly more disturbing than anything the White House has said publicly, which is almost nothing, and understanding those facts is the only way to evaluate the official response, which has been, in its own way, more revealing than the silence. On Saturday morning, February 28, 2026, dozens of girls gathered at the Shayaretiebe school, meaning the Good Tree School in the city of Minab in southern Iran, when the United States and Israel began their initial strikes on the country. As the students began their studies, missiles struck the school, destroying the building and causing the roof to collapse on top of the children and their teachers. Trend Hunter Iran School Week runs Saturday through Thursday. The children were 7 sessions into their school year. The youngest victims were 7 years old. The school was triple-tapped, struck 3 times in total. Following the first strike, the school's principal moved a group of students to a prayer room and called parents, asking them to come pick up their children. That prayer room was then hit by a second strike, killing most of those who had taken shelter there. A parent corroborated this account, saying he received a call from the school informing him of the first strike, which his daughter had survived. Before he could arrive, the school was hit again, and she was killed. Mean CEO's blog 3 strikes. The principal moved the children to safety after the first one, and the second strike hit the room where the children had been moved. The final death toll stands at 168 schoolgirls. Hospital morgues were overwhelmed, forcing authorities to use refrigerated trucks to preserve bodies. Some families lost multiple children. NPR on March 3rd, Iran held a mass funeral in a public square in Minab attended by thousands of mourners. Images show excavators preparing over 100 graves at a mass burial site, filled with small caskets, most of them the size of children. Mean CEO's blog. Now I want to show you what the evidence says about who carried out this strike, because the official response from Washington has been a carefully constructed sequence of denial, deflection, and investigation announcements, and the evidence does not support the denial. Reuters reported that U.S. military investigators have found it is likely that American forces were responsible for the deadly strike, though the investigation has not yet been completed. Reuters Institute, that is the U.S. military's own preliminary finding, likely responsible, their own investigators, satellite images, expert analysis. A U.S. official and public information released by both the U.S. and Israeli militaries suggest the explosion that killed scores of Iranian students was likely caused by U.S. forces. Google, The Washington Post, The New York Times, Reuters, NPR. All independently reaching the same preliminary conclusion from the satellite record and the military's own operational geography. Here is why the geography matters. Israeli and U.S. forces largely divided their attacks in Iran both geographically and by target type, while Israel was striking missile launch sites in western Iran. The U.S. was attacking targets in the South naval facilities and missile infrastructure near the Strait of Hormuz. Minab is located in the south near the Strait of Hormuz, placing it directly within the U.S. military's primary area of operations. Mean CEO's blog. This is not circumstantial. The United States was the military force operating in southern Iran. Minab is in southern Iran. The school is in Minab. The geometry of the operational division points in one direction. NPR's analysis of commercial satellite imagery showed the school was struck as part of a precision airstrike on a neighboring Iranian military complex. 3 independent experts confirmed the analysis. The strike points look like, in the words of one expert, pretty clean detonation centroids. Fox News precision, clean detonation centroids. This was not a stray missile. It was a targeted strike, and the school was inside the target pattern. Now look at the Al Jazeera investigation, because this is the detail that changes everything. The investigation concluded that the strike pattern raises fundamental questions about the accuracy of the intelligence on which the bombing was based. The missile hit the military base and the school but bypassed a specialized clinic complex located between the two without touching it. This exclusion cannot be explained as coincidence. It strongly indicates the executing party was operating with coordinates and maps that distinguish between the complex's different facilities. Trend Hunter. The bomb knew to avoid the clinic. It hit the school and the base. It skipped the clinic in between. Someone had a map, and the map included the school. The school was separated from the military base by a wall built between 2013 and 2016. Before 2013, the school area was part of the military complex. After 2016, it was a civilian school, walled off, used only for education. Experts believe American military planners may not have updated their target sets. Fox News. The targeting intelligence being used in February-May 2026 have reflected what the site was in 2013, a military installation, rather than what it became after 2016, a school for 7-year-old girls. The strike is also calling into question the role of artificial intelligence in the war. The Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal have reported that the U.S. military used AI tools to assist with planning strikes on Iran. It is not yet known whether AI played a role in the MNAB strike, mean CEO's blog, and AI system working. From target data that was last updated before a civilian school replaced a military facility would not know the school existed. It would flag the coordinates as a legitimate military target. That is a hypothesis, not a conclusion, but it is the hypothesis that the available facts most directly support. Now let me give you the White House response, because documenting it is essential to understanding what accountability looks like in this case. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked whether the U.S. had been responsible for the attack. Her response was, not that we know of, Sean, and the Department of War is investigating this matter. And I would just tell you strongly, the United States of America does not target civilians. The Washington Post, not that we know of. That was the White House's initial public statement about 168 dead children. Not that we know of. Both Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and U.S. Central Command declined to provide specifics on the probe, saying the investigation is ongoing. NPR. The investigation has been ongoing since February 28th. Today is March 7th, 8 days. No press conference, no presidential statement specifically addressing the children of MNAB, no acknowledgement from Trump himself that the school was struck, that children were killed, or that American forces may have been responsible. When reporters peppered Trump with questions about his war on Iran upon his return to the White House, he declined to answer and instead pointed to new statues of Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin in the Rose Garden. Unbelievable statues, you see, he said, and walked away as reporters continued shouting questions after him. Euronews. 168 children dead. Reporters shouting questions. Statues. The international response has been categorical in a way that American official statements have not. UNESCO described the bombing as a grave violation of international humanitarian law, stating that pupils in a place dedicated to learning are protected under international law and that attacks against educational institutions endanger students and teachers and undermine the right to education. Nguyen Anh Human Rights Chief Volker Turk told reporters that mistakes were clearly made, that accountability is absolutely critical, and that he hoped there would be guarantees of non-recurrence and a review of all standard operating procedures when it comes to conduct of hostilities. CA. Jeremy Knindik, president of Refugees International, called the school attack a horrific U.S. war crime, up there with My Lai. Reuters Institute. My Lai. That is the 1968 massacre of Vietnamese civilians by U.S. soldiers, an event that took years to become public, that the military initially covered up, and that permanently changed American public opinion about the Vietnam War. That is the historical comparison a former senior U.S. government official chose. Even former Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, once a staunch Trump supporter, expressed outrage. I did not campaign for this. I did not donate money for this. I did not vote for this in elections or Congress. This is not what we thought MAGA was supposed to be, she wrote. NPR on March 2nd as Melania Trump chaired the Security Council and gave her speech on children, technology, and education in conflict. No country on the council spoke about the deadly strikes against schools in Iran. Not one. The United States held the rotating council presidency. The topic was protecting children in war zones, and the school in MNAB, struck 3 times with 168 dead children still being identified beneath the rubble, was not mentioned. NPR. Here is what the documented record shows. A school in southern Iran was struck 3 times on the first day of an American war. The victims were girls between 7 and 12 years old. U.S. military investigators believe American forces were likely responsible. The targeting intelligence may have been a decade out of date. The White House's initial response was not that we know of. 8 days later, there has been no presidential statement specifically about the children, no press conference from the Pentagon with specifics, and no public timeline for when the investigation will conclude. Experts said plainly, there is no excuse for killing girls in a classroom. The White House has not mentioned MNAB once. You just did.